Well, hello everyone that's listening. Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world listening to this. And welcome to today's very special webinar, which is going to look at Bermuda's response to the Covid-19 pandemic and map the domicile's route forward in its aftermath, considering both opportunities and some of the challenges. My name is Wyn Jenkins. I'm the managing editor of Bermuda Re plus ILS magazine and also Intelligent Insurer magazine. I'm going to steer us all through today's session. And I'm delighted to say we've already got over 100 people dialed in, and I can see that's ticking up steadily. So Bermuda Re plus ILS is a leading publication of digital content, magazines and events covering the risk transfer market and community on Bermuda. We're delighted to be working today very closely with the Bermuda Business Development Agency, which has helped us in every aspect of putting today's event on. Now, before I introduce our panel, let me just stress that this session is interactive. You can submit questions using the question box on your screen. We will see those and we will try and answer as many of those as we can during the call. So today's session, the title is Clarity in Changing Times. We're going to look at Bermuda's COVID-19 response, how different pillars of the economy have responded, and some of the futures, opportunities and challenges that face Bermuda as we all adapt, I think, to a new normal. So we have a lot to get through today, and I'm sure we'll be having questions as well. So I'm just going to introduce our panel briefly, and then we'll dive right into the discussion. So I'm delighted to say we have on the call today the Honourable Curtis Dickinson, MP, the Minister of Finance of the Government of Bermuda, Craig Swan, the Deputy Chief Executive Officer, Bermuda Monetary Authority, Kathleen Reardon, the Chief Executive of Hamilton Re, Patrick Tannock, the Managing Director, AXA XL, and Chairman of the Association of Bermuda International Companies, Sarah Demerling, the Chair and Executive Committee Member of the Alternative Investment Management Association, and also a partner at law firm Walkers Bermuda, and finally Greg Wachachowski, the President and CEO of the Bermuda Stock Exchange. And Greg is also a board member of the Bermuda Business Development Agency. So a pretty star-studded panel and very, very well equipped to sort of guide us through what's happening in Bermuda in terms of its response to COVID-19. So let me just start with a fairly broad question, and I'll put it to all the panelists in turn. I'm sure they'll respond based on their experience in their particular industries and companies. But first, I think a good place to start is how, I'd ask each of you, how would you characterize Bermuda's response, its approach to tackling COVID-19? And perhaps we could also get a brief update for those of us overseas on what comes next in terms of easing restrictions. Minister Dickinson, perhaps I could ask you to address that first.
Sure, thanks, Wyn, and welcome to everyone who's joined us today for the webinar. I would say that with the benefit of hindsight, I would characterize the Bermuda government's response to COVID-19 as proactive, aggressive, and successful. We took a very, very aggressive posture to dealing with this pandemic and have implemented a series of measures to contain the spread of the outbreak and, as a result, minimize the loss of life. The strategy adopted involved shelters in place, social distancing. We, in early March, took a decision to put a travel ban in place for certain countries that had been experiencing a significant outbreak of the disease. We took a step further in late March of closing down our international airport to all non-residential passengers. We closed schools, pools, gyms, salons, barbershops. We essentially closed the country down. Starting in April, we actually entered into a shelter-in-place order, which lasted for approximately a month. And then in early May, we started the process of reopening the country over a series of 4 phases. We are now back in a place where we are back open. Air travel has started to commence again, although sparingly. We do still have social distancing protocols in place. Masks are required to be worn in public spaces. The sizes of gatherings are limited. We only lifted a curfew about a few days ago, and so we are getting back to what I guess we all are learning what is now the new normal. But in hindsight, I think that we have done a very good job, but we are very, very careful not to get ahead of ourselves because we understand that the threat of this pandemic has not fully passed.
Brilliant. Thanks, Minister. Craig, perhaps you could give us a perspective on the same question from the point of view of the Bermuda Monetary Authority.
Sure, Ben. And good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Focusing on the BMA, fortunately for us, we had already made the necessary investment to operate remotely, coincidentally as part of our IT 2020 initiative. It became evident that COVID-19 would cause the country to close. Our staff promptly re-engineered our processes to align with a remote environment. A number of staff worked around the clock so that the day after we closed the office, all staff had remote connectivity. In 1 week, almost 100% of our staff were able to perform all office tasks while working from home. As a result, I'm sure industry, foreign regulators, and all other bodies we deal with would be able to attest. The BMA was able to work from home over the past 4 months, keeping all functions running and without tail off in our performance.
It's Sarah here. I think we have a technical problem with our presenter. Wynne has said to carry on. So, Craig, thank you so much. Maybe Kathleen, should we turn it over to you?
Oh, thanks, Sarah. Hi, Kathleen Reardon here. Pleasure to speak today. I wanted to focus on the Bermuda's response and in particular how the reinsurance industry reacted. I mean, first of all, the office community turned on a dime, moved from working to remote working without many glitches at all. I mean, at Hamilton, we were in the middle of an integration, and we didn't miss a beat. That went pretty seamlessly. But if I look at the insurance industry specifically, data is at the heart of what we do, and working from home only accelerated accessing that data with the use of technology and just getting us over that hurdle or that fear of using technology to do our jobs better. And I can't even say that we could have done this 5 years ago. So it was just amazing to see. And also our industry is very relationship oriented, and the video capabilities of MS Teams, Zoom, others, it just kept it going. And actually expanded who could participate. So if you think previously, if you were at a strategy day or some senior meetings, it was limited to a few people, and now you can have the junior staff join, learn as you go. It just enhances coaching, mentoring, networking for that next generation. So that's been a very positive. There have been some positive outcomes from COVID-19, and I definitely say that's one of them. But the shift to remote working with Bermuda's technical capabilities, it worked well. And then perhaps for internationally, just looking at Lloyd's, most of the Bermuda insurance companies have operations in Lloyd's, and just to see what COVID-19 did to spur the acceleration of the digital platform. So the Future Lloyd's strategy has just been amazing. So insurance industry, reinsurance showing a lot of resilience. And, we couldn't have done that without the support of the government and the BMA with how they handled the situation.
Thanks, Kathleen. It's when you had a problem with my line for a sec, but I'm back. Patrick, could I turn to you next? And I guess as chairman of the Association of Bermuda International Companies, you've probably seen multiple perspectives on Bermuda's response. What would you say?
Well, hi, good morning, everyone, and thank you for that kind introduction. Yeah, I just want to echo the comments that have been made today about how the Bermuda government has communicated with clarity, acted decisively, and been bold with legislation to keep us safe. I believe they've also been very, very responsive and very responsive to best practices, international best practices, and have implemented those best practices in as close to real time as possible. And have used the data and the science to really make material decisions impacting the jurisdiction. Let's face it, 10 years ago, we would never have been able to transition as seamlessly as we did if there was a pandemic. We would have been extremely challenged. However, technology has rapidly evolved in recent years, and we've been able to offer our colleagues with increasing frequency the option to work remotely. I think our proactive approach, along with the launch of our working from home toolkits, have enabled many of the companies to transition relatively seamlessly to working from home. I think the IB community in general has done a great job to maximize business continuity while working remotely without compromising productivity. Of course, as Kathleen alluded to, we've had to evolve as the meetings have transitioned to virtual and the conversations and best practices have as well. But I would sum it up as saying that we haven't missed a beat. We are still paying our claims and negotiating new deals, and the sector has been extremely resilient.
Great. Thanks, Patrick. Sarah, perhaps I could come to you next. Could you give us a perspective perhaps from the alternative investment community?
For sure. I think as Craig mentioned, the speed at which the BMA pivoted was incredible. And so if you were doing an application for a formation or a new structure on the one day before we went into lockdown, the next morning we were able to progress and still get electronic certificates of incorporation and approval. So I think, embracing change, people didn't stop and panic. Probably a lot of that has to do with innately, a lot of the companies on island do have business continuity plans, and we do know what to do when we have a natural disaster. This isn't anything that we'd seen before, having to deal with the regulator and the ROC in this way, but it worked very, very well. And I think, as Patrick said, the international business community reacted very quickly. There was a lot of transparency, which helped. The BMA and the ROC issued very clear communication as to how they wanted people to interact with them. The government, held regular press releases, so we knew what to expect. There was a very collaborative, as there always is on island, sense of teamwork, of everyone working together and trying to make it happen. So, yeah, echo what's been said already.
Great, thank you, Sarah. And Greg, coming to you, what would the perspective of the Bermuda Stock Exchange be on how Bermuda sort of managed this?
Yeah, thanks, Wynn, and good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, evening. It was clear to us, given the unique nature and seriousness and the rapid escalation of the pandemic as it unfolded, that we were entering kind of uncharted territories. But I believe this is exactly what we and in our industry we're prepared for, and what Bermuda's prepared for, and it's the reason why we've spent a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of resources on building continuity plans, which we can implement in a moment's notice. I think, as to mimic what everyone said, is Bermuda is a resilient and resourceful country, necessity because of our unique geographic position in the world. And I think one of the things that's really kind of stands out to me is the immediate response from the Bermuda government, from our business and broader community, was one of cooperation. It was evident that we came together, really quickly to keep essential services operating and embracing and adhering to all the official guidance that was being promulgated by the government to kind of prevent the spread of the virus. And I do have to, again, echo kudos to the government and the community for, listening to, creating clear guidelines and listening and adhering to those guidelines, because it really did effectively prevent the spread of the virus quickly here in our country. As it relates to the Bermuda Stock Exchange, and very specifically as a full member of the World Federation of Exchanges, and we sit on the board of directors of that organization, we fully support the position of the World Federation of Exchanges, which was clearly articulated at the beginning of the pandemic, that global markets must continue to operate in times of deep systemic pressure and volatility. Maintaining market operations, we feel, is critical in addressing pressures on the financial system and to provide investors with the liquidity they need in times of market stress. As a result, and as we've seen during times of significant global capital market pressure, well-run and regulated exchanges and clearinghouses remained open and continued to function, providing their critical services that they do on a daily basis, which is facilitating price discovery, trading, settlement, and allowing for hedging and risk transfer to the broader markets. This is essentially and critically important at times of credit market ceasing of operations, which happen regularly in times of deep systemic pressure. At the outbreak of the pandemic in Bermuda, in particular, BSX was deemed an essential service. We continued to trade and settle, and the capital market here in Bermuda continued to operate without interruption. The only difference was, I think, as we've heard from the rest of my colleagues on the panel, is that we began a remote working environment, which continues to exist today and which is effective. But the BSX has been a fully electronic platform, probably one of the first fintech companies in the country. So it wasn't really anything new to us. Our operations continue to function seamlessly, and we continue to provide the support to our domestic capital market and our international clients. So thanks, Wynn, back to you.
Okay, thank you, Craig. So perhaps it's a good time, and we've sort of touched on some of this already, but perhaps to drill down into some of the specific sectors on Bermuda. Obviously, a lot of the audience will be very interested in the risk transfer sector. Bermuda is very much the heart of many elements of that globally. So by risk transfer, I mean both reinsurance, insurance, ILS, and captives. So I perhaps ask the panelists to talk us through not just how Bermuda's responded, but how those sectors have responded. Have they has demand increased? Have things changed? How have each of those sort of component bits of the risk transfer sector on Bermuda fared? Perhaps, Craig, I could come to you first on this. I mean, you talked us through that the Bermuda Monetary Authority has basically remained open and very functional. What's demand looked like? Have you sort of seen any changes in that, any fluctuations? How have you, what sort of trends have you seen?
So when you have me smiling, P.G. Wodehouse once said, if there's one thing I dislike, it's the man who tries to air his grievances when I wish to air mine. Now I'm going to reverse that, and I'm going to basically say it's the man who tries to tell his good news when I wish to tell mine. And so knowing that personal irritation and the considerate person that I am, I'm going to let the others tell the good news about how the risk transfer sector has fared. But one thing I will say is that Bermuda has a very unique position, being the only jurisdiction in the world that has lead positions in reinsurance, insurance-linked securities, and captives. So it was critical to the world for the sector in Bermuda to remain open. So now I'm going to pass it to the rest of my fellow panelists to share their good news.
Okay, great. Thanks, Craig. Well, Kathleen, perhaps I can come to you next again then. I mean, you touched on this in your earlier answer, but I mean, what's the response of the reinsurance industry been to this, and how has Bermuda sort of positioned itself within that?
Thanks, Wynn. So this isn't the first time, right? The value of Bermuda insurance market has been proven many times. We've been able to provide capacity when on a global basis, insurers, reinsurers were retreating. And, think back to Hurricane Andrew, 9/11, Hurricane Katrina. In all those cases, Bermuda stepped up and provided capacity. So I don't see that any different going forward. And from that perspective, Bermuda, because we step up and continue to offer our product, Bermuda then plays a valuable role in aiding global economic recovery after all those disasters, and we're doing it again now. And this is, Bermuda's uniqueness there comes down to the regulatory environment here. Craig, I'll toot Craig's horn a little bit. A quick response if we develop a product, deliver a product, formation of startups. It's just a very favorable environment to allow that, including innovation. So if I'm looking forward, innovation comes to the fore. Many Bermuda carriers are looking for a pandemic solution right now, whether that's a private-public partnership, whether that's a parametric structure, but it's very exciting times. And then on top of that, we were talking earlier about not missing a beat. I mean, virtually no one in the insurance industry, international business, has been laid off. Everybody is still working and being very productive from their home office.
Absolutely. Patrick, could I ask the same of you? With your sort of AXA XL hat on, you're bang in the middle of the risk transfer world. Has it been business as usual? Has the lack of perhaps face-to-face contact been an issue at all?
No, it hasn't. I think we've seamlessly transitioned to Zoom calls. Obviously, it's a bit of an adjustment, and we had to adapt. But I think, if anything, Bermuda is the king of the world when it comes to adaptability. So we haven't missed a beat. Our distribution partners, in terms of the brokers, have done a really good job in terms of transitioning to remote working. We miss our clients in terms of the actual face-to-face meetings, but it hasn't really impacted the quality of the discussions and the negotiations. We're still paying claims, we're still negotiating deals, and every day we're proving our relevancy as a jurisdiction. So we haven't missed a beat at all. It's kind of been business as usual, to be quite frank. We do miss, like I said, the personal contact, but there hasn't been anything material that has changed in terms of our ability to generate results and to interact with our clients, although it's now virtual. So, we've obviously been embarking. We've obviously tried to make sure that our colleagues, take courses in terms of how to be effective in a virtual environment, to make sure that they connect and that we get to the point. I think the meetings initially were a little long-winded in terms of, everybody was focused for all the appropriate reasons on how's everybody doing. As things have evolved, we've gotten better and more focused, and that's kind of natural. But, as far as business operations, we haven't missed a beat at all. Obviously the industry has been impacted in terms of the shutdown. We've had two black swan events in the last several months, the pandemic and then the actual lockdown. And that's obviously impacted several of our clients in terms of, their operations. I mean, if you're in the hospitality industry, things have virtually come to a standstill, but other industries are ramping up. So it's been a mixed bag in terms of, what this means for our operations. But, in terms of continuity, business continuity, we haven't missed a beat as an industry.
Okay. Thanks, Patrick. Greg, it seems natural perhaps to come to you next on the ILS front. Patrick and Kathleen there talked about the adaptability of Bermuda and the sort of potential for innovation moving forward. Do those things apply to ILS as well?
Yeah, thanks for that, Wynn. And I guess I'm going to take a little bit of a different tact with the BSX's response to this, given, I think, our unique position as, a market infrastructure operator, which kind of sits kind of at that centerpiece of convergence, which is the connection between the insurance industry and the capital markets, and share with everyone this morning kind of our view of what's happened and what's happened in the specific segment of the insurance industry, this particular asset class, which is ILS. And just as a quick reminder, back in 2009, the BMA was, I think, extremely forward-looking and introduced a new series of classes of insurers called special and purpose insurers, which immediately grabbed the attention of the global insurance market, and I think really was the catalyst for propelling Bermuda to the forefront, and and us becoming a center of excellence for the creation and support and listing of global ILS vehicles. And how that's translated for us, even before and during the pandemic, is, as Patrick said, and to use two of his terms, it's been business as usual, and we haven't skipped a beat, missed a beat at all here. In fact, it's been a really robust cycle for us. The BSX, we're now the world's leading exchange in terms of listing ILS vehicles, with about 470 of those listed here, with a nominal value of about $38 billion, which represents about 85% of the global issuances of this specific asset class. What we've also seen for the second and third time around is that the ILS market, certainly in the property catastrophe side, has proven resilience in times of global crisis. And even when there's high systemic pressure in the financial markets, ILS is viewed and continues to be viewed as a low correlated with low beta to the broader capital markets. And what we've seen in this particular instance is that the pressure that's been put from an investor's perspective, from a capital markets perspective on the ILS class, has been more to kind of find the yield that's been created in the ILS security to offset some of the losses in a portfolio's other investments. So, once again, ILS is not only proven to, be an effective hedger in a broader portfolio of investments, but also it's been seen to provide, liquidity in times of big pressure as well. The other thing that we're seeing that doesn't surprise us at all is, increasing interest from other jurisdictions to enter the ILS space, which we're keenly aware of in Bermuda, and large jurisdictions such as London, Singapore, and Hong Kong, which it's not surprising given the traction that ILS as an asset class has gotten globally over the last 10 years, and just the position that Bermuda has carved itself out as a niche player and a niche center of excellence in this space, and we do watch that very closely, but we're also aware that as more and more centers come on, that'll continue to broaden and expand the risk transfer pool, which if we look at this holistically, provides more capital flowing into the market to help narrow what is a pretty wide protection gap in terms of uninsured places in the world. So it's been a really interesting period because there has been the systemic pressure on the markets. There has been, as my co-panelists are saying, there's been huge pressure on how we operate from a regular basis. But we haven't missed a beat, and business is happening, and business is coming. New business is coming. New deals are being discussed on a regular basis. And I'm delighted to say that Bermuda is at the center of that. So thanks, Wynne. Back to you.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you, Greg. Minister Dickinson, could I ask for your thoughts on this? I guess we've talked about innovation and Bermuda, potentially providing a sort of innovative solution to pandemic coverage or something. I guess that idea would be amazing, right?
When I think what you have seen is Bermuda doing what Bermuda has always done. We have a track record of being a place for innovation and a place who has a track record of also responding when the markets or when a crisis arises. Kathleen mentioned earlier how Bermuda stepped in and stood up post several catastrophic hurricanes. I can recall 9/11 and Bermuda's role in helping to get the world moving again once that tragic event happened. And I think it's something that we have, consciously, the partnership between the government, the regulator, and industry have worked to build that capacity so that when it's needed, we could be there to deliver as needed.
Brilliant, thank you. So it's probably just worth broadening this point beyond the risk transfer sector to sort of Bermuda's wider financial services sector. It's obviously got a rapidly growing wealth solutions, asset management sectors, which I know that are sort of areas Bermuda's going to do well in the future. I wonder if I could perhaps come to you next, Sarah. Did those sectors sort of fare well during the pandemic? And also, if you do have any views on the risk transfer sector, you could give us those as well.
For sure. Thanks, Wynne. I think, similar to what you've heard already, everyone recognized the importance very quickly of providing clients with the highest standard of service with minimum disruption. Looking on the wealth management side, as you would expect in a crisis, people prioritize their families. It was a very human time. They reevaluated their wealth management models. We're seeing a lot of estate planning, which includes jurisdictional location choices. Bermuda's always had and does have a thriving trust sector. But at the moment, the government's working with stakeholders to introduce a bespoke private family office product for the needs of ultra-high net worths. It's being progressed. I'm hoping the Minister might be able to share more details with us in today's call. So that's on the wealth management side. On the pure asset management side, on the whole, it was business as usual, as we've said, in terms of establishing new structures, particular emphasis on private equity, meeting filing deadlines. Nothing was missed, nothing was dropped. Some new transactions, I think, have been affected, but a lot of them seem to have gone on hold or been delayed rather than being stalled completely. Personally, I'm seeing an increased number of inquiries to the formation of segregated account structures, particularly our new ISAC, which is a segregated cell where each cell has its own legal personality. I think one of the reasons for this is even in times of pandemics and crisis, investors are seeming to be moving away from style-focused and they're looking instead for solutions for specific outcomes, be that ESG or sustainable investing. It's more of a multi-asset solution, which lends itself well to the segregated account structure. And we are seeing more ESG-driven strategies. ILS obviously is a great example of this. Just like the insurance industry, on Ireland, we've got a terrific breadth and depth of experience and capabilities across all of the alternative investment industry. And we've got very strong relationships with leading market participants. I just wanted to maybe touch on a couple of the other unique strategic advantages that we have, which makes us competitive in the investment environment. Our proximity to the US capital markets, just being an hour and a half away. Now we actually can start traveling again, but the virtual meetings have been very successful. Bermuda, as we said, it understands both capital markets and insurance, and that's been evidenced, as Greg said, by the strong convergent sector. It helps that we have one regulator for both insurance and the fund products, and I think for that reason, Bermuda has still been the preferred jurisdiction when it comes to ILS funds. And the last thing I wanted to highlight, given our location in the fund sector, the asset management sector, we cater for both the US market and the EU market, which is quite unique. So for instance, we're seeing a lot of changes in the landscape to closed-ended funds legislation, not just in Bermuda, but across all the jurisdictions. That's led to managers doing jurisdictional shopping, which they maybe haven't done in prior years, and it's effectively leveled the playing field. Bermuda compares very favorably. A couple of examples are limited partnerships meet all the provisions that would be important to private equity general partners. If you take a Delaware-style partnership agreement, we can easily Bermudanize it to cover off safe harbor provisions. We don't require GPs to be registered here. We don't have local auditor sign-off, so that keeps frictional costs down. We also have a Bermuda LLC, which is modeled off a Delaware style. And then on the EU side, we were delighted in February to be put on the whitelist, recognizing Bermuda complying with EU's tax governance principles. I think Bermuda's reputation is because of the long-standing role we've had in the space, but also our regulation does have a lot to do with that. And then I think post-COVID, more than ever, there's going to be challenges for managers to balance between value creation for investors, given the increasing demand on the regulatory environment. I think Bermuda can be part of that solution because of its robust regulation. And we also welcome technology and disruptive change, which I think we'll touch on later.
Great. Thanks, Sarah. Thank you. So, Minister Dickinson, Sarah's painted a very robust picture there of the wide financial services sector and teed up a couple of questions for you. Are you able to comment on those?
Sure, Wynn. And thanks, Sarah, for the big commercial. I would say that out of this crisis, I think we see lots of opportunity, and the opportunity to leverage those things that we have done well before and foresee continuing doing well in the future. I would say that Bermuda is an ideal jurisdiction for wealth solutions for the asset management space, for the high net worth services. And I think that the resiliency that we showed during the course of the pandemic, I think, brings to fore those things that we do well, and those things are actually leverageable into other opportunities. There's been discussion earlier about our legislative framework, our regulatory environment, the quality and the age of our legal system. It's somewhat predictable. The wealth of intellectual resources that we have, our location is key, and I think all of those things can be leveraged that we use to promote our abilities in the financial services, broader financial services space, can also be transferred to the wealth space. And I think people are looking for predictability of solutions. They're looking for innovative place to do business, looking for smart people to do business with, and all those things are boxes that I would check when comparing Bermuda to any other place in the world.
Great, thank you, Minister. Would any of the other panelists care to comment on the financial services sector? Craig, is that something you want to give a perspective from the BMA on?
No, I think the minister and Sarah did a fantastic job, very articulate, so I'll pass. Thanks.
Yep, okay. So it just seems so we've covered risk transfer and we've covered the sort of financial services sector. I think the majority of people listening to this are probably, very interested in those sectors, but I know as someone who visits Bermuda regularly, I think a lot of people would also be interested in Bermuda's wider economy, its resilience, how tourism, infrastructure, things have fared. Minister, would you be able to just give everybody listening a sort of update on that wider picture on the Bermuda economy?
Sure. So while we've had a lot of success in the financial services space, that success unfortunately has not extended to our tourism industry. As a result of the health measures that we took to ensure that we could contain the spread of the pandemic, we have to basically shut down our borders, and so we have a fairly robust cruise industry that results in on order of about 500,000 tourists a year, cruise passengers. And we suspended all inbound flights with non-Bermudians, non-residents into the country. And so the impact of the pandemic has been felt particularly hard by our hospitality sector. I can tell you that in doing some of the work that I'm doing in terms of working on financial matters for the country, we've looked at guidance from the World Bank and seen that we're expecting a contraction in global GDP of between 3% and 5%, and that is even before the forecast by Jamie Dimon of J.P. Morgan Chase 2 days ago, which is expecting a 6% contraction in fourth quarter GDP in the United States. And so that will, I think, have a knock-on effect on our tourism industry. Having said that, I think the fact that Bermuda has had a fairly contained experience with this pandemic in terms of the spread of the illness, we would be seen, I believe, as a place where people would want to come to spend some time for vacations, et cetera, to get away from areas where the pandemic is still in full spread. And so we've put in place some protocols around how we test people. We have a fairly aggressive testing regime. We've put in place regulations to help us to ensure that people kind of honor the rules. And my sense is that while tourism has been significantly impacted negatively, there are opportunities for us to rebound because of the experience that we've had as a jurisdiction with respect to containing the illness.
Great, thanks, Minister. Patrick, is this something you'd be able to give us some insight on? Any other aspects of the wider economy, I suppose, with your hat on with the Association of Bermuda International Companies?
Sure, Wynn. I'll give you my perspective. Well, let's look at it from this perspective. Make no mistake about it, economic recovery will be challenging. And although Bermuda has a really good track record of responding to the challenges and the opportunities that come from change, this is unprecedented. And like other jurisdictions around the world, our resilience will be tested over the next several months. I think fundamental to our journey of recovery and ultimately economic renewal, we must agree on a common set of facts as to the extent of the challenges that we face as a jurisdiction. And I think one of the keys to our resilience will be how quickly and effectively we adapt to the new normal. And our focus should not be on just getting through the pandemic, as it will eventually end at some point. We must also focus on what the environment will look like when it's over and what we need to do to position ourselves to ensure relevancy in the new normal. We just don't want to be in a position of what we could have done or should have done but didn't do. Too late. The work to reposition ourselves must ramp up now, and I'm absolutely convinced that is happening. Bermuda is primarily a service economy, and as an overarching trend, we must acknowledge that customer behaviors, both tourists and business people, have definitely entered into a digitalized, experience-driven era. Critically, we've got to factor in the implications of COVID-19 on just about everything, from consumer behavior, acceleration of technological disruption, globalization, supply chain issues, the way we work, the way we will work, to structural changes such as, but not limited to, real estate as we navigate our way to economic renewal. I agree with the Minister that we are currently and aspire to remain one of the safest places on the planet, and the recent decisive action by the government with respect to initiatives to market the island as an escape from the global pandemic to attract remote workers is gaining traction. and has been well received and is a good example of Bermuda responding to the opportunities that come from change. Now, additionally, on the premise that political, social, and economic stability are critical to our sustainability as an international business jurisdiction, our future sustainability is interconnected. In Bermuda, as the Minister pointed out, we have access to some of the top intellectual capital on the planet that have consistently shown a willingness and a desire to work collaboratively with government to provide solutions. And we all have a role to play to mitigate the impact on our economy and put us on a path to economic renewal. Now, economic recovery will be challenging globally, but by working together, and I mean all of us, I believe that Bermuda will emerge from this stronger than ever.
Great, thank you, Patrick. Kathleen, you gave us some great insights in the risk transfer reinsurance sector earlier. I think you said you sort of have a view on the wider economy as well. Can you share that with us?
Yes, thanks, Wynn. I do want to echo what Patrick said about just the solutions that the Bermuda government's already finding to aid the economic recovery, like the one-year residency certificate. So kudos to the government and Minister Dickinson. I do want to elaborate or reiterate just the collaboration on island between multi-industries and government. I guess specifically if I talk about ABIR, which is the Association of Bermuda Insurers and Reinsurers, there's a lot of collaboration with the government through the past couple months. I mean, first, you have to say that when you talk about a linchpin, it's clear the Bermuda insurance market stability has a knock-on effect through the economy, right? We're successfully working from home. It does create a trickle-down effect. We shop, we dine, we entertain, and we want to consistently do that. But through all that, we've been collaborating with the government, giving our feedback, supporting some decisions that they made about reopening the economy, and that's been great. So ABIR recently issued a press release saying that its members pumped $3 million of investment back into the Bermuda community during this uncertain time, and that all that helps kickstart back the economy. So with the insurance industry providing consistent employment, consistent community support, it certainly is a part of Bermuda's foundation, part of the resiliency.
Great, thanks, Kathleen. Sarah, would you sort of echo some of that on behalf of the sort of the investment side of things and the wider financial services community?
Definitely. I mean, I think we've almost done too well to be able to be working from home because of the IT infrastructure that we have. A lot of firms have put on more servers globally to allow working from home. And whilst people are coming back to the offices and they are encouraged to come back to the offices, in many instances it's on a voluntary basis. So, you know, for the local economy, for the coffee shops, for the bars, it's having a mindset of coming back to the new normal. So I think, yeah, there isn't really a difference in the experiences that we're seeing on the capital side that we're seeing on the insurance side.
Okay. Great. Thanks, Sarah. Just to move things on again then, we've probably used the word innovation quite a lot so far in this call, and clearly that's always been a hallmark of Bermuda in the past, and clearly everybody thinks it will be in the future. I know historically as well, that's at the heart of that has been driven by sort of regulatory initiatives. Perhaps, Craig, I could ask you to talk about the role of the Bermuda Monetary Authority. You've commented on how you've coped with the crisis, but perhaps you can talk to us about some of the initiatives you've got or had before the crisis and will have afterwards to sort of encourage innovation and position Bermuda for the future.
Sure. I would say that the role of the BMA was first and foremost to assess the impact of our registrant population, to minimize solvency issues, and then second, to ensure that all of our functions remained up and running, including our licensing function, given financial services was probably one of the few areas with growth prospects during the height of the pandemic. In addition to the funds that Sarah mentioned, 19 of the 25 insurers licensed to date in 2020 were licensed with all BMA employees working from home. And in addition to that, we've licensed 1 insurance intermediary, 1 investment business, and 4 corporate service providers, all working from home. So you can trust that the BMA is going to be there, and that Bermuda more widely, the government, industry service providers, the registrants will be there to receive quality business. Getting to your question, Rick Risby quotes his father in Lessons from a Third Grade Dropout, and he says, good enough is not good enough if it can be better, and better is not enough if it can be best. That's something that we encourage in our teams at the BMA, which ensures that our regulatory frameworks remain under review to adequately address risk and also support financial services innovation. So one particular product, one recent innovation relates to our new framework around, and it was mentioned earlier, the type of structure, Incorporated Segregated Account Companies, or ISACs, which will allow a mix of fund and insurer incorporated cells within the same ISAC structure, making setup of funds and alternative capital vehicles like ILS much more efficient. Thanks.
Okay, great. Thanks. So let's stick with the theme of innovation a minute then, and that's clearly a big part of this discussion. Kathleen, perhaps you could give us your take on that on behalf of the reinsurance industry. And I mean, I see some of the questions that have come in, I guess, are asking around whether there'll be a class of 2020, a reference to obviously some of the formations Bermuda's seen on the reinsurance side after big losses in the past, which arguably is one form of innovation. What do you sort of anticipate? A class of 2020? Other forms of innovation? What would you say, Kathleen?
Thanks, Wynn. Where we're finding ourselves now is a hardening market, definitely on the insurance side. It's picking up momentum on the reinsurance side. And for the Bermuda carriers, that will definitely mean growth. That will definitely mean a chance for rate adequacy, profitability. That will mean we will add jobs. And I talked earlier about some innovation solutions, I'll skip that word, such as parametric solutions for the pandemic communicable disease. As far as a startup, what we've seen so far is a lot of interest in the excess and surplus line space, the E&S space in the U.S., and you've seen some confirmed startups in that area. But that doesn't mean that Bermuda will be quiet. At the very least, there are several syndicates that have been eyeing up the Bermuda market for several years now, and they've decided that this is the right time to make a move and set up some operations here. I do believe there'll be a few more. There always are. We can certainly smell the opportunity, and somebody that has a value proposition that is additive will certainly be welcome. There's it's a very large pie, and we haven't yet found solutions for all of it. So there's plenty to go around, and creative ideas will certainly be welcomed.
Great, thanks, Kathleen. Patrick, could you pick up on some of those points? What sort of innovation would you like to see from Bermuda going forward?
Hi, Wynn. Yeah, I don't envision anything particularly material that's going to really move the needle in terms of our efficiency or whatnot. I think prior to this situation, we were already dealing with some real challenges in terms of some of the hardening that we were seeing. We were dealing with rising loss costs. We were dealing with exponentially accelerating social inflation and worsening loss trends and deteriorating performance in U.S. casualty lines with no material tort reform on the horizon. That's going to continue to accelerate hardening in that area. We're all dealing with sustained hardening in the U.S. D&O market. So, you have the perfect storm, so to speak, in terms of the conditions that we're experiencing right now. I think, with respect to COVID-19, I guess the jury's still out in terms of whether it continues to evolve from what was once simply an earnings event to potentially becoming a capital event. There has been some talk about startups coming into Bermuda next year that are heavily capitalized to take advantage of this opportunity to recalibrate pricing that more reflective of the actual exposure. But I don't see anything, on the horizon in the immediate future that is really innovative that's going to move the needle. I think people are battening their hatches down right now and just kind of trying to do what they have to do to remain relevant and sustain their business operations. But having said that, Bermuda is, as always, the best suited domicile to provide low-frequency, high-severity type products, as our infrastructure and enabling regulatory environment allows better efficiencies, and we can provide real value to our clients in the form of unique customer-focused solutions and high-quality, efficient capacity. I still think that one of our differentiators is the fact that you can put together $1 billion worth of high-quality capacity without getting in a taxi within a period of 24 hours, which I think is a real differentiator for us. But one of the areas where I would like to see some innovation is in the area of behavioral innovation. Bermuda really is a service economy, and we have to make sure that when we interact with our clients, that it's meaningful and that we differentiate ourselves. But as far as actual real innovation, we're obviously going to continue to embrace technology, because obviously those jurisdictions and companies that are quick to embrace technological change will secure a competitive advantage. And I think Bermuda is uniquely situated to do that. I mean, that's always been one of our differentiators. But I think time has shown over the last several decades that the real primary asset as the technology becomes cheaper is the people and the culture. And so we need to continue to focus on that by maintaining an enabling environment for the free flow of high-quality intellectual capital so that we can continue to fuel our prospects for innovation. But as far as in the insurance space, I don't see a lot. I think that, we are working on solutions for intangible assets, and there's some interesting work that's taking place in that area because, we've done a job as an insurance industry in providing solutions for bricks and mortar, but we haven't really cracked the nut when it comes to intangible assets in terms of providing real value for that in that area. And the last time I checked, I believe that most of the companies on the New York Stock Exchange, the top 10 anyway, didn't really make anything tangible. So that's an opportunity for us in terms of trying to find solutions to potentially provide or monetize some of the intellectual capital or some of the intangible assets. But that is very much in its genesis right now, and will be continued to a certain extent on what kind of data we can use and to get a better handle of its predictability to provide real solutions in that area. So roundabout way of responding to your question, but it's a very fluid, extremely fluid landscape right now. So I'm not going to get into predicting what's going to happen in 2021.
Okay, thanks, Patrick. And I guess you've teed it up nicely there for Greg. Greg, I know innovation's a topic close to your heart. I know the BSX prides itself on that front. Do you think COVID-19 will act as a sort of further catalyst for that? And maybe you could comment if there's a role for the BMA to kind of play in that as well.
Thanks for that, Wynn. And I'd like to actually approach that from two perspectives. And, for the direct answer right now is just to talk a little bit about the ILS sector, and then maybe come back to this as we talk about other innovative forces that are happening in Bermuda that, we're clearly focused on in the exchange space. But, from the ILS perspective, I think we need to kind of just, revisit history a little bit to see how ILS actually started to gain traction and how it gained traction in Bermuda. And the whole premise of that was based upon the innovative nature of Bermuda, where Bermuda was, clearly ensconced in its position as the world's risk capital, and I'll use that several times through this presentation. And the expertise that was developed here in particular market segments and understanding of the nuances of the industry really gave the platform to be able to watch evolution in the marketplace and what was going to be happening going forward. And in the beginning, ILS was seen as something that was a nuisance, and it was even called as alternative capital. It was kind of considered this new thing that maybe was a flash in the pan. But Bermuda, I think, very, very smartly noticed that this was not just a flash in the pan, that this was an evolutionary force in the market, and there was, I think, wholesale embracement of this, and we've seen the result of that this asset class is not only got traction, but has developed momentum and actually has solidified a position for this country, for Bermuda, as an ILS capital, a global capital. And I think as we go forward from a perspective of innovation, we're going to see the ILS asset class continue to look at ways to expand into different risks and what risks are being transferred, which, I'd love to hear the views of, my colleagues that are actually working in the industry, but I think will be complementary to what's happening in, in the traditional space. Areas in which, have been talked about for, at least the last couple of years in our circles have been, transferring risk and covering risk in cybersecurity. Now, there's a huge amount of detail and complexity of that, but it's certainly, in the forefront of people that are looking to provide risk transfer solutions there. And I think, right smack in the middle of this event that we're finding ourselves in right now, there's discussion about, and we're seeing products that have come to market, that'll continue to come to market, that'll address pandemic-type situations to provide, catastrophe cover and cover there. So I think, the innovative nature of the insurance-linked security structure, is going to just deepen and accelerate as we go forward. And it'll be, I firmly believe this, as all my colleagues know, that it's a massively complementary item and an item to the Bermuda insurance, kind of experience that we have. So I'm going to stop there, and then we'll come back to other innovation and further questions. But thanks, Whit.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you. Sarah, sticking with the theme of innovation then, you touched on this again earlier, and also I think you mentioned some sort of regulatory tweaks that had helped that in the alternative investment space. Could you elaborate any more on that? Is there any further innovation you expect as a result of COVID-19?
Yeah, so I think picking up on Kathleen's comment earlier about a pandemic solution, and with Greg's enthusiasm for ILS and the BFX, I think pandemic Cat 1s obviously is going to be something that people are looking at, and they'll turn to capital markets to do that. They'll have an important role of providing the financing and the capacity. I think it's great that Craig made reference to the hybrid vehicle, this one structure that can have a license of a fund and an insurance company at the same time. So that's kind of allowing for your ILS funds to invest into your SPIs, where traditionally they've been two separate vehicles. And I think it's been tried in other jurisdictions. I think it's something that will lend itself very well, and I'm eager to see the consultation paper come out on that. I think kudos to the BMA, throughout this period, they have continued to put out consultation papers to allow for innovation. So when Greg talked about the SPI back in 2009, we've recently had guidance notes updated, and we're waiting for a framework to come out to deal with collateralized insurers, notwithstanding other consultation papers for digital issuances. So I think the BMA, and it's something that has been within Bermuda's history, that collaboration between government, regulators, stakeholders, having an idea, consulting with the industry that knows, where to place it and how it should be developed, taking that feedback on board, really has helped us deliver and will continue to help us deliver on innovation.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Minister Dickinson, sticking with the theme of innovation further, I know that obviously before all this, over several years, Bermuda's looked to lead the way on some aspects of technology innovation, what you might call fintech, insurtech, things like blockchain. I know that was important to Bermuda. Where do you foresee innovation heading now? Do you think COVID-19, as a crisis, will actually act as a catalyst for further change and make perhaps technology even more important in the future?
Well, I think, yes, we have been a leader in putting in place a legislative and regulatory framework around fintech. And I think that out of the COVID crisis, the need for the importance of continuity and resilience have been highlighted for all those persons who have been in need of their service providers to step up and deliver when they were in a moment of need. And my suspicion is that that need will continue as we go forward. Interestingly enough, the Financial Action Task Force had predicted that digital payments would comprise would grow by 12 to 13% annually. I would suspect that as a result of COVID, that growth rate will change significantly upward, and that there will be a much greater emphasis on digitization of activities going forward. And so I think that we are positioned very nicely to take advantage of those changes. And yet again, our ability to innovate or being a place where innovation is allowed to thrive, I think will serve us well.
Great, thank you. So, sticking with the theme of, I guess, COVID as a sort of catalyst for change, technology in particular. Kathleen, coming back to you, I mean, you've talked extensively about innovation already, but I mean, I know that Hamilton has always been very big on technology and data and was in many ways ahead of its time. But do you expect that sort of trend to accelerate now?
Thanks, Swan. Absolutely. And if anything, the pandemic has ripped the Band-Aid off of so many issues, and a significant one is protection gap. And the industry does tackle protection gap concerns through some private-public partnerships on flood and terrorism, but there's also consortiums like the Blue Marble Microinsurance. So Blue Marble's a consortium. There's 8 members. Hamilton's a founding member, and they're in InsurTech at heart. And their technology allows underserved farmers in emerging markets to buy insurance and seeds at the same time via a cell phone technology. And then the loss triggers are off of parametric readings. So it's very efficient. It gets to the ultimate customer, and it's all based on technology. So this is helping close the protection gap. If we can use this in the more developed world, that would be fantastic. So I think everybody's mindset is more front of mind. Okay, we've embraced technology. We're working from home. Let's push it further and see how we can accelerate its benefits. But also, when you said catalyst for change, that was interesting. And remote working has accelerated discussions on flexible working policies. And I think this has a potential knock-on effect for gender parity and other fair career success. So there certainly is research that proves women still bear the brunt of caring for being the parents, caring for the elderly, other responsibilities. And I think this, with everybody working from home, this can be more easily shared and managed. So I think if these flexible working conditions continue, some of those career advancement hurdles could be removed. This could easily be one of the strong benefits, unexpected positives coming out of COVID-19.
Okay. Great. Thanks, Kathleen. Some interesting thoughts there. Craig, perhaps coming to you, would you be able to offer us a perspective from the BMA on, I guess, technology and InsurTech and FinTech and how some of those things might be accelerated now as a result of COVID, and how you perhaps would respond to that?
Sure. A few months back, there was a popular question that was making its rounds on social media and the internet. And that question was, who led your digital transformation? A, the CEO, B, the CIO, C, COVID-19. And obviously COVID-19 was circled as the answer. COVID-19 exposed, for us, or basically for companies, the over-reliance of legacy systems on manual processing, which obviously is not that good not ideal for working from home. It also, it exposed capacity inadequacy. And when you combine that with a recent Salesforce research publication that revealed that 84% of customers valued the customer experience as high as products and services. COVID-19 has changed customer experiences around, or expectations around, the digital experience. So now that the genie is out of the box and this digital sugar rush is likely to, not change at all. Moreover, one thing that we saw around the world was that governments witnessed the limitations of the traditional payment systems as they attempted to execute their COVID-19 stimulus packages such as unemployment insurance, paying that. And so solutions like digital identity and digital programmable money would have been much more efficient. So summing this all up, the BMA's expectation is that we will see a proliferation of products both incorporating and combining Internet of Things, oracles, artificial intelligence, smart contracts, digital assets, and blockchain. The BMA's experience and expertise in machine learning and our experience and expertise in the regulation of insurtech, digital assets, and other business models that incorporate distributed ledger technology has us well prepared for the COVID-19 aftermath. And from the comments of the other panelists, we also know that the industry is well prepared for the aftermath. Thanks.
Thanks, Craig. Greg, perhaps coming to you next. I mean, you've already talked extensively about ILS and innovation, but is there anything on the specific sort of technology front that you see coming down the track? Well, I know it can, but could ILS potentially embrace blockchain, for instance?
So thanks for that, Wynn. So what I do want to emphasize is that, while the ILS asset class is an incredibly exciting and developing asset class, it's not the only thing that the BSX is focused on. So we are a fully functional stock exchange that, kind of not only supports and drives the development of the domestic capital market, but also provides international capital market opportunities. And I wasn't joking earlier on when I made the comment that the BSX probably was one of the first fintech firms in Bermuda when we actually launched our electronic trading platform back in the early 2000s, and we digitized securities positions so they could be safe kept in our securities depository. So, fintech technology, trading technology is actually the underpinnings of the BSX, and it's a really exciting company to work for in a country like Bermuda. Again, and going back to the I word, the innovation, because the exchange can touch so many different aspects of what's going on and developing in the country. Blockchain and digital assets and cryptocurrencies are things that we're watching. So when the BMA, and following the lead from the government, started looking at the digital asset business and really positioning Bermuda to move forward as a digital asset supporting financial services platform, certainly the BSX wasn't overlooked here, and it attracted these announcements about digital asset and ICO attracted so much international attention and so much activity in the space in Bermuda, and we saw it at the BSX, and one of the results of that was at the end of 2019. This group, Miami International Holdings, which is an owner and operator of 3 regulated, fully electronic U.S. Regulated exchanges, which are called MIAX, obtained a controlling interest in the BSX. And that group, since its founding in 2012, has been a pioneer in developing cutting-edge trading technology, and their fully electronic U.S.-based exchanges have challenged legacy trading platforms in the United States in the asset classes in which they compete. Their success is seen just very clearly in their daily increasing market share in the U.S. futures and options space, and this is an exciting development for the BSX from a technology perspective, because one of their drivers in becoming affiliated with the BSX was leveraging the very forward-looking and thoughtful and deliberate regulatory framework that was implemented by the BMA, to provide a regulatory framework around the digital asset business and the cryptocurrency business. So the BSX, in conjunction with the MIAX teams and some of their affiliate companies, are working very closely to create a digital asset business platform in Bermuda that will dovetail nicely with the BSX. Some of the examples of what we're looking at in this space right now are items such as a cryptocurrency index tracking fund, creating a regulated trading platform for crypto or digital asset related instruments such as cryptocurrency derivative products. So these are things that we are, from a capital markets perspective, kind of scoping out and looking at and seeing how we can bring, a really interesting new angle based upon our capital market and financial market intermediary experience to Bermuda. So I think that what I'd like the folks that are kind of dialing in to listen to is, whilst we're the world's capital of the world, we're also not standing by, and we are doing other things that are extremely innovative and very forward-looking in terms of technology and kind of cutting-edge technology. So thanks, Wynn, back to you.
Yeah, thanks, Greg, and thanks for reminding us all that, the BSX obviously is a world leader in ILS, but many other things as well. Sarah, perhaps coming to you next. Greg alluded there to sort of many of the innovations going on in the capital markets and other aspects of the BSX. The alternative investment space is pretty sophisticated already, I think, with technology. But do you expect COVID-19 to sort of kick that on even further?
For sure, I think that without a doubt, and a lot of people are looking to, set up funds that are embracing blockchain. I think it's important to note that government was it was the driver of the fintech blockchain initiative. We very quickly put legislation in place, the Digital Asset Business Act, which has already morphed to bring in derivative side of things, and to just in May, the Digital Asset Issuance Act came out, which kind of replaces the ICO legislation. The reason that I think government was keen to focus on the sector, and the BMA is keen to recognize that disruption does create opportunities, is that we do it in a very safe way. We don't take risks, we take calculated risks, and we do it in a safe framework, ensuring that AML and ATF is absolutely paramount to any of these initiatives. So while I think the creativity is there, and definitely there's going to be a lot of product and innovation, we do it in a very sensible, thoughtful way to make sure that we're always meeting international standards, and not getting in the way of creativity, but really making sure that it is robust, and that we're conscious, particularly in the crypto space, that reputation is everything. We need to know who the players are. We need to do AML on them. We've got a very robust regulatory compliance infrastructure, and I think that's important. I think building on new products, new funds, exploring new opportunities, but making sure it's done in a safe environment.
Great, thanks, Sarah. And I think, Patrick, the only one I haven't asked yet about sort of innovation and technology. What would you sort of maybe respond for AXA XL, but also obviously, as I keep mentioning, with the ABIC hat on, you do see multiple industries. Do you see COVID-19 as being a sort of catalyst for change?
I do. I absolutely do. From my perspective, I can echo all the comments that everyone has already stated in their time. But it's a fact that companies and jurisdictions that are quick to adapt new technology will gain a competitive advantage. And as a jurisdiction, those jurisdictions that have failed to adapt have got left behind. We've got to be courageous and act with a heightened sense of urgency in embracing these new technologies, whether it's artificial intelligence or machine learning or cloud computing, to harness the data so we can achieve better predictability, efficiencies, profitability, and to also enhance solution options to existing and emerging risk. From my perspective, although technological change always causes disruption, to remain relevant and sustain our cutting edge, we as a jurisdiction absolutely must embrace it. And I think for the most part we have. That's always been one of the differentiators of Bermuda relative to the competition. I think that emerging technologies such as AI have the potential to have a bigger impact on anything since the advent of computers, and its consequence could be far more disruptive. And being that it's both powerful and relatively cheap, it's going to spread a lot faster than computers did and touch just about every single industry. I look at it from the perspective that it's going to augment and improve and help us to work smarter. The real potential is not just automating or accelerating existing capabilities. The real prize and potential of AI and emerging technology is being to do things that haven't previously been done. Now, I said this earlier in an earlier comment that we've done a nice job with bricks and mortar solutions, but we've got to assertively demonstrate leadership in utilizing big data and AI to ramp up our efforts to provide value and ensure relevance in mitigating exposure to intangible assets. We're experiencing this period of intense creative destruction and this period of extreme fluidity, which is when Bermuda has always stepped up and provided its value in the world stage for our adaptability and our speed to market. And those of us in the insurance industry who rely on data, and AI is critical to optimizing the possibilities of big data in our sector, as harnessing the data to secure better predictability will lead to a competitive advantage. Now, whether it's to provide solutions for intangible assets by utilizing sophisticated algorithms or larger quantities of data and capitalizing on an exponential increase in computer power, we have the culture and ingredients to lead the world and enhance our growing reputation as the Silicon Valley of insurance jurisdictions, as technology, like I said earlier, will get cheaper with time, and the primary assets will become the data and the intellectual capital, as long as we as a jurisdiction maintain our enabling environment for the free flow of high-quality intellectual capital so that we can continue to drive innovation. So that's my perspective on the technology. What it's going to do, and who knows? But I'm pretty confident that with the pressure on margins and the pressure on expenses, that technology is going to be the solution that we've been looking for some time to reduce those expense ratios. Whether it's insurtech or fintech, it doesn't really matter. We've got to embrace it and use it to our advantage if we want to maintain our cutting edge.
Great, thank you, Patrick. So we've got just short of 15 minutes remaining on this call, and thank you to the just short of 300 people listening right now and all the questions coming in. So I think we can turn our attention to some of those questions, but there's so many. I think I'll sort of summarize them, if you like, and sort of put the broadest points to the panelists to sort of look at. I guess the main theme of them really relate to Bermuda's sort of role in a post-COVID-19 world, and I assume a new normal emerge eventually, which will present challenges but also opportunities. And also we've had a lot of questions around how Bermuda may position itself in the future, how some of the new regulatory environments on a global scale might impact it. So just thinking about those points as kind of and looking at some of the questions, if I can ask the panelists to do that. If you look at Bermuda's role now moving forward, and bearing in mind we've got just sort of 10 minutes left, perhaps I can ask each of you to sort of give some final thoughts, thinking about those things, how Bermuda positions itself going forward. Minister Dickinson, could I come to you first on that, please?
Sure. I would say that Bermuda will continue to play a critical role in the post-COVID-19 world. I think, as it's been said before early in the discussion, we are a leader in the reinsurance, the ILS, and the captive space. And I think that our performance during the pandemic affirms the importance of our jurisdiction. Without a doubt, the provision of insurance and other financial services products has been very important to the handling of the fallout from this pandemic and will be critical, I believe, to the eventual recovery. We have a reputation of being an innovative jurisdiction. We have always been known to punch above our weight class, and I think by virtue of the fact of our size, we constantly are working towards reinventing ourselves to remain relevant. And the attributes that Patrick talked about in the prior question are the things that have stood us in good stead over the course of the last 5 to 6 decades. And I see us doing more of that because that is how we've managed to survive. The government has, I think, worked really well with industry and the regulator. And I think as long as we have that symbiotic relationship where we are leveraging off of the strengths of each other to provide solutions to customers, we will always be a force to be reckoned with.
Brilliant. Thank you, Minister. Craig, can I ask you some sort of final summary thoughts and perhaps where you see Bermuda's role in the future post-COVID-19?
Sure. I'll borrow from a Winston Churchill quote, which basically says that the pessimist sees difficulty in every opportunity. The optimist sees an opportunity in every difficulty. Bermuda has always taken an optimistic view, and so Bermuda we know that there are a number of opportunities that will arise from COVID-19. Some were mentioned earlier on. Just to give one example, COVID-19 insured loss estimates range from 40 billion to 130 billion thereabouts. But the economic losses are multiples higher, meaning that, as Kathleen, I think, mentioned, there's a significant protection gap around pandemic cover. So complex losses like pandemics that lack the diversification will require a solution combining government, capital market, and insurance market efforts to hedge the risk. Further, while alternative capital has proven to be a useful tool, that sector has had a few years of trapped capital, and this year will probably be another. So this sets us the stage for solutions that bolt on to those structures to offer investor liquidity. So what does this mean for Bermuda? I would say that the Bermuda ecosystem, given the country's knowledge and experience and the Bermuda Stock Exchange, and also having in excess of 70% of the global alternative capital capacity based here, makes the company an ideal place for tail risk and liquidity solutions. And finally, on the regulatory side, I would say that COVID-19 will cause us to re-examine how we view risk, particularly tail risk correlations. So this re-examination will impact the stress and scenario testing that the BMA requires of registrants. It will also cause us to raise the bar on our expectations around registrant risk management. Thanks.
Brilliant, thank you. Kathleen, coming to you next. How might everything we've been through reshape Bermuda's role in the future, do you think?
Yeah, maybe there's a lot of topics there, but I think every indication is that Bermuda will continue to show its preeminence post-COVID-19, the challenging times. We have the excellent regulatory environment, productive partnership with government and the private market, concentration of intellectual capital, financial capital, and we've mentioned several times that it's truly an innovation laboratory. We have a great track record of creating relevant products, aiding in the global economic recovery post-catastrophes. There's a question there about asked by the audience about face-to-face conversations and could this be a hindrance for new people entering the industry or the job market. And I would say the incoming generation to the workplace are digital natives. They've grown up in a technological environment and they will be very resilient. And I also mentioned the video calls have enabled more participants to join. More junior people are learning, advancing their knowledge much more quickly. And we've even seen a preference for clients to turn audits, which is a main staple in the insurance industry, is auditing the client's files. We see clients pivoting to virtual audits, which allows the reinsurers who are auditing the insurers to have a much more broad view of the underwriting discipline of the original insurance companies. So there's lots of positives. We still love our face-to-face conversations and relationship building, but I haven't seen it slow down, and it has some secret benefits that are definitely positive. And then perhaps to address one of the other points raised on the questions, with respect to the insurance industry, Bermuda continues to be an attractive place for startups. I mentioned that the market is getting better, rates are going up, and that usually means that our industry would like to grow and add jobs. So with all that, I'm feeling pretty optimistic about the future and can turn it back to you, Wynn.
Thanks, Kathleen. Just got about 6 minutes remaining and 3 panelists to get through. So Patrick, perhaps I could come to you next on the future of Bermuda and if that will change now.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for that. Post-COVID-19 world can't come soon enough for me, and I think a lot of people on the call. But anyway, a key component of our value proposition as a jurisdiction has been and continues to be our ability to respond very quickly to change. As product cycles continue to contract, those who can deploy the capital the fastest stand to make the most for the longest. I believe that the old dynamics that determine market cycles no longer apply, and those simply waiting for market change will eventually be challenged for relevancy. The Bermuda market's ability and willingness to execute on a real-time basis to put capital to work in providing solutions to the challenges that come from change in a modern technology-fueled world is unique. In a post-COVID-19 world, as a jurisdiction, we must collectively build and utilize our competitive advantage of speed to market to provide real-time solutions to the opportunities that come from change. And I believe that collectively, both industry and government must work together to ensure that we minimize any bureaucracy that could negatively impact this competitive advantage and identify any area of friction in order to enhance our speed to market, especially, as we enter a new era of capital on demand or just-in-time capital as the detachment of capital from risk continues to disintegrate. We must also ensure that we continue, as I've said many times throughout this panel, to easily attract fresh, high-quality intellectual capital while continuing our commitment to retain and develop our current intellectual capital to ensure a win-win and continue to drive innovation. If we do those things, I believe that we will be just fine and we will prove our relevance and our value to the rest of the world. And when we can quantify the impact that we've had on many countries or many parts of the world in terms of rebuilding communities after natural disasters, but I think the new era is going to require that we really fuel our energies to provide solutions to intangible assets, amongst other things, such as the economic gap between the insured assets and the non-insured assets. But I think we're going to emerge just fine, at least from an international business perspective, and we will grow our reputation as a domicile choice.
Great, thank you, Patrick. Sarah, coming to you, Bermuda's role in terms of the alternative investment space, is that going to change at all? We've just got a few minutes left, so if I can ask you just to not take too long.
Sure.
Thanks.
I'll keep it short. So I think the existing regulatory framework that we have creates certainty, whether that be in the fund space, in the blockchain space, on the insurance, and that's very important in the current climate. I'm ever the optimist, so I think we're going to emerge stronger. I think on the asset management side, more people are hearing Bermuda's story. They're understanding the benefits of setting up capital structures here. We're able to, confirm to people that we do have a thriving asset management industry. We have been here for a long time. We didn't go anywhere. We're getting stronger. I think if we can attract managers to come and live and work here, that can just be a win-win. And as mentioned, the digital nomad initiative to have a one-year residential certificate for people to come and work remotely, I think is a great initiative. So, yeah, I think it's an opportunity. I think we, having had so many people listen to us virtually around the world that maybe wouldn't have done, I think with what's happening in the EU and all the offshore jurisdictions being revisited is giving us a great opportunity. We've got a wonderful framework. We've got great intellectual capital on the island. So I think it's a strong story. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Sarah. And Greg, coming to you last. Some interesting thoughts there from the other panelists. What would be your sort of perspective on Bermuda's future role?
Sure, I'm going to echo my colleagues' optimism, but the optimism isn't based upon just a gut feeling. It's based upon the fact that this country has to be optimistic because survival and innovation's in its DNA. For our friends that are joining us, just to remind them, Bermuda's located 700 miles from the nearest landfall, nestled just gently and comfortably between two of the deepest capital markets and insurance markets in the world. And we provide significant benefit to each of those. So we've had to survive over the decades and centuries. So we've seen these kind of catastrophic things happen, and we've lived through them. And what's different this time around is that our regulatory framework, our intellectual capital, our business infrastructure, it has just grown and it's gotten more solid. So, we are not only remote, but we're able to seize the opportunities that are coming and will come our way in terms of the areas in which we excel. From the BSX's perspective, I think, again, as I hope, the listeners would have sensed, we play a pretty broad role in the community here, in the economy here, and our support of the international capital markets from Bermuda. And I think the timing's serendipitous, right? Some of the things that are actually going to be opportunity drivers going forward really fall right in the sweet spot of global stock exchanges and things that we're looking to do. So it's product differentiation, which BSX clearly is focused on in terms of providing insurance support to the insurance market. And, we talk a lot about exchange-traded risk, on a regulated market. So Bermuda is well positioned for that. Leveraging the hard work that's been done by the Bermuda government and the BMA in terms of carving out a niche and a regulatory framework for digital asset strategies in a very deliberate and well-regulated and safe way. We're going to see how we can dovetail with that and provide capital market support there. So, instead of looking at the future as kind of this bleak, kind of barren waste, post-COVID-19 coma wasteland, I think that, most of us see it as, something that's, providing an opportunity and something that's actually giving us the opportunity to shake the status quo and actually, kind of re-enter the conversation with a little bit more energy and provide a lot more support to the areas in which I think we'll excel, and we've excelled in the past. So those are kind of my kind of closing thoughts on that one. Thanks.
Thank you, Greg. Very good closing thoughts. So we've been running for 90 minutes. We've had lots of questions, lots of people listening in. I think it was a really fascinating insight into where Bermuda's been and where it's going as a result of COVID-19. So it just leaves me to thank the BDA for working with us on putting today's event on, and all the panelists for taking the time out and speaking so openly on both the opportunities and the challenges you see going forward. Thank you everybody for listening and participating. Hope it was useful, and I'm going to wrap it up there. So thank you, everyone.